Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Building Your Life podcast. This is another unique episode. We've got somebody exciting with us on the call today, and this is Dr. Fred Moss sitting across from me on the Zoom to record today's episode. Dr. Fred, we spoke a little bit offline. You think about what you do much differently, which is what I like to have on the Building Your Life podcast. People who think differently kind of dig below what we tend to see in the headlines and everywhere else. But nobody can introduce yourself better than you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about not just what it is that you do, but why you do it?
Sure. Thank you. And thanks, John, for having me on. And, before we go too far away from this, I think the idea that I think differently isn't really so. So,
Okay.
the truth is, I bring us back to what we all know to be true. And that's all that I'm really saying. And so maybe that's a little bit different than my industry, which doesn't do that. My industry builds on some foundations that I believe are, made in sand and they're not as nearly helpful as they're designed to be and not really as progressive as what they say. But in general, what I say, which is the idea we'll get to here, that human connection is at the heart of all healing, is not something that is very arguable. We already know that. After all, John, the reason we're meeting today is that we can show off the possibility that we have a human connection, and then people can get inspired by our human connection and somehow feel vicariously connected to one or both of us moving forward. It's all about human connection. It's what we're pursuing over and above all things. So, yeah, I'm Dr. Fred. I'm a psychiatrist. I've been a psychiatrist for a little over 36 years, and I've been in the mental health field for a little over 46 years. And that's pretty interesting as I say it. And the truth is, as I realize that I've been a psychiatrist for a little over 37 years. So that's why the math wasn't working out, but that's the story. And in that time, I've had the opportunity to see how psychiatry is run as a leadership position in nearly every single modality for which psychiatry has anything to offer the medical world. And I've done that, out of home bases. I lived in Cincinnati for a while. I lived in Michigan for a while. I raised my children in Cincinnati, and then I traveled around the country and ran around the world as well with the magic of telepsychiatry. I was able to continue being a psychiatrist when I was traveling the world, and such that like Thailand, Bhutan, Nepal, Israel, France, England, Italy. I've done psychiatry from those spaces into rural United States, as well as a little bit out there as well in those countries. Now, here's the story. I have been deeply interested in communication since I was born. And in fact, I was called on the day I was born to come in and bring joy and peace and unity to a family in chaos and disarray. I was assigned to be a bundle of joy, and I did pretty well with it for a couple of years. Although my older brothers would probably not say that I've done well continuously. I have done pretty well to bring that, to make that my job. And I saw very early that communication in whatever pace, whether I'd be crying or whether I'd be laughing or telling a joke or looking cute or whatever I'd be doing, I could change the room with however I was communicating. And then I could see that other people were changing the room that way too. So I wanted more than anything else to learn how to do that. So when I finally went to school, that's what I was expecting to learn, but that isn't what they taught me. They taught me how to sit down, be quiet, and do what the teacher says, and do that in order to pass. And so in elementary school, I was just bursting to try to communicate. There's no elementary school teacher who ever forgot having Fred as a student. Pretty sure I spoke a lot. I was precocious. I had lots to say. I was funny. I was kind of too smart because my brothers had taught me all this stuff before I got to school. And anyways, it wasn't happening in school. So we kind of moved forward. Was maybe junior high. No, it got worse. How about high school? No, that got worse even again. And I was like, okay, one more time here. Let's go to college. These are communication times. And because I love their helmet, they're only 40 minutes away. I decided I'd go to the University of Michigan. And I went there. I have nothing wrong with the University of Michigan by any stretch, but I only lasted a year and a half, and then I dropped out because it wasn't being taught there either. It was being taught in the streets. I loved Ann Arbor. I like being around people. I like going
Mm-hmm.
over there where I'm not allowed or going over there to meet that group of people. I've always liked really doing that, but it wasn't happening in the classrooms. And so I dropped out and then got on a Greyhound bus and went across the country to Berkeley. to figure out what my life was about. And I'd had a pretty good summer figuring that out, actually, but that wasn't sustainable. And back to school I went. There was this new industry called computers. And I think you probably heard of that industry. And
Yeah.
they had one computer in all of Michigan at the University of Michigan. And so back I went in that bus and got into that program. And that didn't work either. Batch jobs and punch cards. I don't think so. So I dropped out a second time, promising never to go back to school again. And my mom got me an application for a civil service job. She told me I had to work because, that's what moms say. And so I got myself a job as a civil service in a childcare worker. I was a childcare worker at a state mental hospital for adolescent boys. And now I was finally communicating. Finally, I was actually getting paid to communicate. These are just kids 5 years younger than me, barely kids, in fact. And I just saw them as who they were. I didn't see them as patients. I didn't see them as defective or deficient. I didn't see them as less than. I just saw them as people. And I, really was able to relate and able to communicate effectively, laterally, and on solid ground with these people. And soon I got to love that job, but I didn't like the way psychiatry was going. I really disliked the direction psychiatry was going. It was so chemically based. We would call the doctor, if Timmy and Tony got into a tussle or Jimmy was up too late, and he'd come down and talk to the kid for like 3 seconds and then talk to us for like another 7 seconds and then just order something, some sort of injectable. And then we'd have to go retrieve the kid and hold them down and jam them full of some cocktail to put him in a coma or something, like in a stupor. And if he was still in a stupor tomorrow, then we'd say it was a success story. I just thought that was so barbaric. And by the way, that's still happening in so many houses. That's happened many, 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 many times already today, all over the United States. Let's face it. Let's be real. Let's be honest. That isn't an old style. That's the style. That's how it works. So it didn't happen to everyone all over the United States, but it certainly happened to a group of people already who've had an unfortunate morning along those lines. And so I didn't like that. And I came out with the idea one more time that I'm going to go be a psychiatrist and I'm going to carry the torch for communication being central. And so back to school, I went one third time with this new reason to finish my undergraduate in Detroit. And before too long, went to medical school at Northwestern downtown Chicago. I loved it. And I didn't love school. I loved Chicago. That was really fun. That's where I learned how to communicate. That's just that's where I love the streets of Chicago and I love the city of Chicago. And, then I'm spat out and I got to practice and I gather up thousands of patients over time, and I outpatient and inpatient nursing homes, residential homes, homeless shelters, orphanages, you name it. I've been all over the space. And I stayed that way for a while. And then, but eventually it kind of cracked down. I decided that I could no longer just diagnose and medicate people, which was my job description. I hated doing both of those things. I don't see people as a diagnosis. You do have a diagnosis that you don't know. I noticed, by the way, you have a diagnosis. Do you mind if I reveal it to your
Reveal it to the audience because my wife would agree with you that I have lots of things wrong with me.
No, I didn't say that. I said
Okay.
I said you have one diagnosis. I didn't say that you had lots wrong with you. What I said is that you have one diagnosis, and that diagnosis is John Browning. That's your diagnosis. None of us have lived your life. You haven't lived any of our lives, and that's all that you have is what you had. You had what you had, and you've become who you've become. You are who you are, and you're headed towards who you're going to be, and that's John Browning. It's okay to have that diagnosis. That makes some sense. But all the other made up, manifested, embellished, fabricated diagnoses made up of alphabet soup that people can remember, that's not a diagnosis, actually. That's just an agreement reality where you go in and find out, like we talked about before, what's wrong with me. And this is the only field that if you tell somebody there's nothing wrong with them, they get furious. It's very interesting. They go next door to go get a doctor. They're like, why did I come here if you tell me there's nothing wrong with me? It's because I don't know. So I could tell you there's nothing wrong with you. No, that's not it. I'm going next door to find out what's wrong with me. And they go get somebody else who jam them with a diagnosis. Then they're happy. Mm-hmm. So it's an odd field that way, and we, and I didn't want to do that anymore. So I started taking people off of medicine and off their diagnosis. And sure enough, they got better, way better, predictably and reliably and powerfully better. And in that period, I realized that the medications and diagnoses were not doing what they said that they would do. And I wanted to scream it from the mountaintops. But I didn't do that. Instead, I kind of tried to, because violence doesn't really work. And so what I did was kind of back off and see where is the entry point of this crazy cycle. And what I realized the entry point is that people think there's something wrong with them. See, if people didn't think there was something wrong with them, they wouldn't have to go to a doctor to get a so-called diagnosis and then start some sort of treatment plan to get some sort of medication that actually perpetuates the condition it's marketed to treat. We wouldn't have to go that route if you weren't so darn certain that there was something wrong with you. If you got to believe that we don't blame a log for burning in a fire, and there's not anything wrong with you. Life is totally challenging. Maybe the idea that you stumble, bumble, and tumble through life doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. Or maybe the idea that you're afraid, anxious, depressed, maybe that's not mean that something's wrong with you. Maybe that just means that's an uncomfortable aspect of what it means to be alive in the present day in the human condition. Like that would be okay to think that. And then we don't have to treat each other like someone's less than or defective or deficient or ill. And we can start actually seeing each other for who we are, which is people who don't have a owner's manual. We don't have a template. We don't have a recipe book for how to be human. We don't even know what normal is. You understand? We don't even know what normal is. We don't have a working definition of normal, and we're walking around thinking we know what abnormal is. What the heck is that, man? That's crazy, right? Like compared to what? What is abnormal comparing to if you're calling it abnormal? And again, just looking at this thing in reality, there's some soothing that happens when we start seeing each other as just another human, trying to put one foot in front of the other, trying to make some sense of it all, trying to actually be the person we need to be. Like choosing to do the next right thing in our particular world may look different across the board. So maybe there's nothing wrong with you. Maybe there's nothing wrong with them. Maybe there's nothing wrong with her. Maybe there's nothing wrong with him. Maybe there's just nothing wrong. Maybe this is how the world's unfolding. And it's possible that you don't have a psychiatric diagnosis, even if you have agreed that you've had one for 20, 30, 40 years. I get it. Some doctor told you have a diagnosis, or many doctors. That's what it means, by the way. When you have several diagnoses, all that means to me is that you've seen several doctors and they've all had the audacity or the liberty to render an opinion about whether or not you have a particular alphabet soup diagnosis. And you then agreed that you did. And when you agreed that you did, that's when you walked out and became who that was. So not beforehand. As soon as you decided you have some recurrent depression or PTSD or autistic spectrum disorder or narcissistic personality disorder, social anxiety, as soon as you decided that you have some of those things, well, now you do. It's true. I get it. And now you're taking medicines, by the way, which cause the chemical imbalance itself. Of course they do. That's what they're designed to do, cause a chemical imbalance. And now you actually have the condition that you thought you had when you started taking the medicines. That's pretty fascinating. Good work. And now we start seeing an industry that is self-perpetuating. And it's okay. The industry's fine. No problem. I tried to call the industry, but I couldn't find a phone number. I was like, can you give me a number of Big Pharma? No, we don't have a number. It's because it's not a thing. And it's not the medicine's fault either, because medicines are just like plastic little capsules. They're not things. You can't blame those things for the problem. That's not, they're not causative. What's causative is that we think there's something wrong with us. And what about looking in the mirror and realizing with all your flaws and all your character traits and all the things that are imperfect, maybe you're just being you, and maybe the misery that you sometimes feel is part of the human condition. One last thing before we move on is Siddhartha, or if you look back at Buddha, he sat under that tree for a long time, right? And he figured out the world. We're still spouting a lot of the findings that he had. Many of us are full scale commitment to the Buddhist way of thinking. He sat there for a long time, and at some point he decided to get up. And obviously everything wasn't resolved. There was still a piece or two that he didn't resolve. Like, for instance, attachment, for instance, misery. These are things that no matter what, he couldn't even wash his hands of those things being inevitable. And we start looking at that's how life goes. So that having an attachment or having some misery, welcome to humanity. That's where welcome to humanity that's my brand. And that's where I built on in the last several years, becoming a coach, a transformational coach, the undoctor. taking people off of their diagnosis, off of their medications, and giving them their life back, taking them out of the industry so that they can actually live a life of freedom and power. And it's no problem. I don't have any interest in making a dent in the industry. I don't have an interest in like bringing all these people away so the industry fades. I'm not interested in that at all. What I'm interested in is for the people who are tired, who are sick and tired of going down an industry pathway that isn't helping them or perhaps is leaving them feeling worse. There are alternatives that are possibly way better, way more effective, cheaper, do not require authorization, and do not require any kind of money at all, or any other than just paying attention to stop doing the things that are hurting you and start doing things that don't. And now you get to actually live a life that works, or at least works better than the one that works if you take it by default. So the True Voice technology, the Undoctored technology, the Moss method, Welcome to Humanity, these are all things that I've compiled or in some cases designed. And the idea, again, is that there may be nothing wrong with you. And if there's nothing wrong with you, welcome to humanity. And if it's welcome to humanity, let's talk, let's learn, let's share with each other, let's learn from each other, let's connect. Is this revolutionary? John, I don't think this is revolutionary. I think this is going backwards to what we all knew when we were 3 years old. It's nothing here. You're not going to find, this isn't like upending the whole concept at all. It's just reminding us that that whole thing was built on a castle made of sand anyways. And when we start realizing that, back 100 years ago, they didn't have anything called social anxiety. They didn't have anything called, social phobia or post-traumatic stress disorder. They really didn't have them. Because they didn't need them, because it's not a necessary. They did have broken arms, by the way. I mean, there's some medical conditions that made it through time. You have a broken arm, you go to Singapore, you still have a broken arm. You go to Reykjavik, you still have a broken arm. In psychiatry, you have a condition, let's say bipolar disorder, you go to Singapore, you don't have bipolar disorder anymore. All of a sudden, you got something else. You may even be a shaman. You may be even somebody who's like a leader. Who knows? It'll be interpreted as some sort of something, but it won't be bipolar disorder. And that's the same too. If you go to Reykjavik, it won't be bipolar disorder anymore. It'll be something else that represents who John Browning is in the world of the listener, in the world of the receptor, the receiver. So since the condition doesn't line up across all cultures, it's not very real. It's simply just a conversation. And in that conversation, it's subject to total and complete transformation so that we can get ourselves to understand that maybe, just maybe, for real, there's nothing wrong with you in the first place, even if you're freaking miserable. It's okay to be miserable. It's okay to be hopeless. It's okay to be helpless. I'm not wishing it on you. It's very, very uncomfortable, but it's very much part of life. And it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. That's the whole point.
That doesn't mean you need medication to sort of quote unquote fix it. That idea, right?
It's interesting. If you do go to medications, like I said, induce, increase, perpetuate, and frequently actually cause the symptoms are marketed to treat. So you never actually truly need medicines. Now, for the group of people out there, and there always is a group who is pretty sure that they need medicine, they're so happy with their diagnosis, they love their therapist, they love their treatment plan, they wouldn't change it for the world. All I'm asking them to do, please keep doing what you're doing, for sure, 100%. Like, of course, I'm not arguing with you at all about whether this works for you. No problem. If it works for you, you should bottle that up and don't ever change, because if you get to that place in life about any topic where you wouldn't change what you have for the world, man, that is gold. That is serious stuff. And you need to hang on to that for the rest of your life, if that's where you get to. I'm speaking more to the tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people who feel like they've been undertreated, mistreated, overtreated, undermedicated, overmedicated, et cetera, inside the psychiatric system. And literally there are tens, if not hundreds of millions of people who fall into that category, who already know that their life didn't get better when they knocked on that door. And we want them to realize that what they're doing, what they have, what their condition is not a permanent scar in any direction. And in fact, one can, from this point forward, do, and say, be a different person than you've been up until now. We are not slaves to the habits that brought us to now. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And we see this too here at Guardian Rock Wealth, where we've been told since we were whatever age that this is the way that you do things. And this is why you do things and everything else. And because of the fact that it kind of is just told to us over and over and over again, and this keeps happening as adults, we're told some of the same things. And what we find in the financial services wealth management industry is that things that worked really, really well back in, say, 1978, 1980, don't work in today's world. And yet, because the narrative never changed, somehow, like, we got computers, right? We got cell phones, we got artificial intelligence, we got all these other things that have innovated over time, but in oftentimes in psychology, oftentimes in other areas, including wealth management, for some reason, there's been no innovation. There's nothing is better now than happened back in the 1980s or 70s or whenever it was before, because the narrative never changed, because it wasn't in the best interest of a very large party, let's say, that is
Industry,
out there.
an industry, yeah.
So we kind of see it in our industry as well. The other thing that we see is that because you or Sally or Joe listened to something last night that said that a particular thing was wrong, was bad and horrible, that it must be for everyone. But really, everything is just a tool in the toolbox. And whether or not it's right for you depends on your situation. And it's not inherently evil because it is what it is, or bad because it is what it is. It's just not right, maybe, for you.
Mhm.
And getting people to like get over the idea that the last thing they heard is absolutely true for every situation is really tough too. But I love what you said about the idea that nobody has experienced what you have experienced. Absolutely nobody. You are unique in the world, and because of that, you have needs, um, desires, things that you do that are right only for you and not for the other person. And one of the things that tends to happen in our industry is you get put in boxes, it'd be like four, maybe five boxes. And okay, you're in the aggressive box, you're in the conservative box. But really, what needs to be done is we need to look at each individual, not just understand sort of what they feel, and feeling is a big part of it. I work in a numbers industry, but more of it than we like to admit is driven by how that person feels inside, what they experience based on all of their collective experiences from birth to where they are now. It's not wrong, it's just who they are. So we need to build those portfolios with certain tools, different tools for different people, that create what they need for what they want, and help them understand why it is that they want it, to create their, again, my whole branding is build your best life using the tool that we call money. But it's different for everyone, and people don't like to really hear that. They want to have, like, I want, to your point, they want this pill that everybody gets, that that has like this issue. It just doesn't work that way in wealth management, or it sounds like in your field as well. Am I kind of getting that analogy right?
Yeah, I think so. That especially if you realize that the pill not only doesn't work, it's not even a band-aid. It's if it was a band-aid, I could actually be behind it as well. And again, the idea is it's a band-aid with a razor blade embedded in it. So we
Hmm.
start seeing that it's not, it works for a short period of time, and then the blood starts oozing out the sides. And when you come to a so-called specialist, we've been taught to do only one of three things, and that is to add, increase, or change that band-aid. And so we add a different additional band-aid, or we increase the size of the band-aid, or we change to a different kind of band-aid altogether. But the
Hmm.
idea of actually taking off the band-aid because there might be a razor blade in it isn't even thought of in the industry. So we don't stop treatment if you're getting worse. So that's one of the things that's really important. It feels like it'd be malpractice if someone comes in the second visit and they're doing worse. To stop the treatment would seem like it's not really good practice. It would be great practice, and in fact, the only practice if the medicines in the first place were the thing that caused the worsening of the condition between the first and second visit. But we're not taught how to do that. We're not taught how to remove medicine in that state. And it's no problem. I mean, doctors are great people. I don't have a problem with my colleagues at all. I get how we got to that space. This is just how we've taught, how we taught to deal with it. It's not a nefarious intention by most doctors. It's not like we're trying to hurt people at all. Far from it. We're doing our very best with the information that we have. And in fact, we're perpetuating the clientele by making, in some ways, planned failure inside of the system allows people to think that they are dependent on their doctor, dependent on their treatment, dependent on the therapy, and dependent on their medications. And maybe, in fact, they're not dependent on any of those things, and indeed actually could step away. Now, we all have had trauma. Don't get me wrong again. Look, I'm not saying life isn't as hard as we think it is. It is as hard as we think it is, for sure. It really is. It's challenging. There's lots of reasons to be really to be struggling in life. If we wanted to find 100 reasons to be depressed, John, it would take us like 4 minutes. If we wanted to find,
Right.
and then if we want to find 100 reasons to be nervous, about 4 minutes. If you wanted to find 100 reasons to be like terrified, about 4 minutes. How about to be distracted? Oh, about 3 minutes. How about if you were looking for 100 reasons to be awkward? Yeah, about 4 minutes. Look, there's so many reasons out there to have an uncomfortable, affect or an uncomfortable conclusion about how life is going, and then to make us sad or to make us scared or to make us anxious or to make us hopeless or to make us, I don't know, feel awkward or distractible. It's very easy, it's very easy, and it's okay that you're falling for some of those traps. It's way okay. It's way okay. Life is hard. It's okay to really get that and to see that every so often you're going to fall on your face for real. And it doesn't mean that you now have a propensity to fall on your face. It doesn't mean you have an increased propensity to fall on your face because you fell on your face before. It might mean, it does, by the way, if you declare yourself as now I'm somebody who's more likely to fall, now you will most likely create a life that is in fact consistent with how you see your so-called condition. But if we start getting that we're all sharing this one thing, and if we come true to ourselves, if we start speaking our true voice, as my book called, or if we start being really creative in our presentation, then we start becoming our own human frequency, which even though we were all separate, we all do share a certain frequency. We're able to, like you and I, actually being able to communicate this rich in this sort of rich way without ever having met each other before, is taking this idea of a frequency and exploiting it. We have a human frequency, even though we've all lived different experiences in different circumstances. And when we exploit that human frequency such that we create a harmonic resonating relationship, dude, that is where the power emanates from. That is where love and healing emanates from. We don't have a space that's anywhere near as profoundly effective than connecting with another human.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think that's 100% true. And I like what you said too about taking things away. One of our kids, we have 6 kids,
Oh,
and
wow.
to your point, they're all extremely different. And we think we pretty much raised them all the same way. They all had the same opportunities and everything else, but they're all extremely different. Now, 3 of them are adopted, so maybe that's part of the reason that they're different. But even our 3 that are by birth are very different. And again, they've had, even though we raised them the same, they've had different experiences when they go outside the home and everything else. And so that's what forms what they're different. But one of our kiddos, I don't think he'll mind me saying this because he's very in tune with who he is. But for a while, he was one of the ones that came out of the foster care system, and we adopted him, and he struggled, right, with all kinds of issues, especially as he hit middle school and everything else. And same thing, they put him on this medication, that, and when suddenly he hit puberty where your chemicals change anyway, and he was still taking all this stuff, and things went really, really downhill very, very fast. What they ended up doing, to your point, is we had to get him in a confined space with professionals And they did exactly what you said. They took all of the external things out, clean slate. And suddenly he was a different person. And he has become, and frankly, he's not, he's an adult now, so I don't know for sure, but I don't think he is taking anything at this point. But he is, he's very happy. He knows who he is. He's, living his best life, struggling, but he's productive in society, just got out of the army. He's, working as an HVAC tech, and I think he's now he's telling me he's going to be a police officer as his next step, and he's going through the training to do that. But it was all about getting him off of all the stuff that was quote unquote wrong with him, and he found ways to deal with some of the feelings that he was feeling, and it's not on any of the chemicals anymore. But he's uniquely him, and always will be. But it's a great example of kind of what you were saying, and like I said, in the wealth management industry, that's what we find too. A lot of people they have certain things in their portfolio, or they do certain things because they've been told to do certain things by the industry, in air quotes, or something on YouTube or something on CNBC or whatever headline happened to hit, when actually what they need to do is they need to stop doing that and do something that's uniquely for them,
Yeah.
not for everyone else. Everybody wants that, magic pill that makes everything better. It doesn't exist. Life is what it is, and it's different for all of us.
Yeah, yeah. And the pills, like I said, if all they did was would be a Band-Aid, I would be down with them. I would actually I wouldn't have a problem if they just numbed things out and they were just a Band-Aid. That would be okay. It's not perfect, but it would be manageable. The idea that they actually make things worse is what makes me need to stay on my hind legs and actually help people see that you maybe don't need to be shoving toxic medicines made in a high rise in some downtown city and somewhere who's making billions of dollars per day in profit margin on this exact item that you're buying, with the whole prayer and idea that it's going to un unimbalance your imbalance, that somehow we're going to meet your imbalance with an imbalance in another direction that evens it out. It's like a bizarre concept, number one, and we bought it as a collective, and now it's an industry that is, perhaps, I've heard it said that this industry has the highest profit margin in the history of planet Earth. The highest profit margin in the history of planet
Earth. That is true. Yeah.
What we're talking about. One of these with a little capsule, little like tablet. People line up around the block knowing that they show up in the morning, get there early, make sure they get their authorization, set aside their kids. They do what they can to go get their medicine, and that they get their medicines, and someone's making a lot of money on those medicines. And it's okay with me. I don't mind people making money. I'm in the financial industry as well. I play around with that whole financial literacy thing quite a bit. And it's okay with me. I don't mind people making lots of money. No problem at all. No sweat. But in this case, you're making money on the heels of, I think, some significant deception, which is the idea that medicines are somehow going to right the pathway of your wrong chemical imbalance that I don't think you even have in the first place. So it's like, oh, the whole thing kind of breaks down at that point. I like seeing people for people and realizing that none of us have a recipe book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like, I love the analogy too of, I believe it's the Japanese, could be Chinese, I'm not sure, it's Asian, but the idea of like the most valuable bowls are bowls that have been broken, and they put those bowls back together, and they use gold and to put those back together. Well, we're all broken, but what makes us who we are are those flaws. Otherwise, it'd be a really, really boring place, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Well, I tell you what, this has been really eye-opening. If people want to get a hold of you, and because you are kind of the undiagnosed, you mentioned this before,
Undoctor,
about
undiagnosed.
making people better, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm about. I look, we get one chance here. And if we're going to eat it up with toxins and eat it up with being certain that there's something wrong with us and we get all caught up with that, that's one way to live through life. I understand, it takes all kinds. But if you want to live a life that's actually worthy and a life that is actually hopeful and a life that is geared towards some form of power of freedom, some sort of contribution, some sort of, self attunement, and some sort of stepping into the adult or the next level that you're intending to be, then perhaps you have to keep your eyes open at other ways of managing your discomfort. So being
Yeah.
highly uncomfortable or being in an unpleasant state does not in any way suggest that there's anything wrong with you. Again, the idea is that when you drive through mud, your car gets muddy. It's okay. It's okay. It's no problem. Your car got muddy. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with the car because it got muddy when it drives through mud. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with a log when it burnt when it was put into a fire. And so we start really looking at, well, if I change the way I look at life, I can start seeing that there's maybe nothing wrong with me. And I can get confirmation for that from myself by using some of the techniques: gratitude, meditation, nutrition, organic food, pets, and creativity and spirituality and service and pampering and nature walks. These are kind of some cool things you can do, some movements and some breathing techniques. There's 20 things that we can do that, have been time tested and proven and actually work to give us a better chance of having a life that works right now, like right now, today, like no kidding. Like you don't need to take it for 3 weeks and, report side effects or anything like that. It's like, no, this stuff really works. And it's one of the possibilities when we're feeling unpleasant. And being unpleasant, again, being in an uncomfortable situation, welcome to humanity, bro. Like this is the way this works. It's pretty uncomfortable to be a human. It's okay though.
Yeah. So, what's the best way for somebody to get in touch with you if they wanted to reach out and learn a little bit more about
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
idea?
Yeah, again, they already know about the idea. I'll be glad to cultivate it for them. Every human
Yeah.
already knows this idea. That's why it's so cool. I ask myself, I don't get a lot of pushback because all I'm doing is shining a light on stuff that we already really know what's underneath. So if you want to get a hold of me, the best place to go is Dr. Fred, drfred360.com, drfred360.com. That has access and tentacles to everything I've ever done, including all my podcasts, a bunch of freebies, both my books, all my keynote speaking and different projects and lots of videos and lots of learning. So I like drfred360.com. It's very slick, and you can contact me from there as well. I also have my main website, which is welcometohumanity.net, and that the first website often points to that website, but that's the main bird, and that's also a cool site. And then I hang out at LinkedIn and Facebook, and I have a new website called Undoctor Reset. Undoctor Reset is helping people actually use the same principles I'm talking about to help others come off medicine, come off their diagnosis, and get their life back. It turns out that you don't need a license to have a discussion with someone about not taking medicines. You could actually do that with your sister. You could do that with your friend. You could do that with your child, and it wouldn't be illegal. You're allowed to have conversations. You're allowed to learn how to be an undoctor. The license is not required to convince somebody to stop putting these medicines in their mouth or stop taking on their diagnosis. They get to stop at their own freedom, after all. And it's like misunderstood that you need a license or a heavy education in order to help someone with having mental health discomfort. It's not true at all. Not true at all. All you need to do is go there and listen and be with that person, resonating harmonically with what they're really saying, and then offering what you have to offer inside of a resonating, harmonic, clean, core, genuine, authentic pathway. And you'll start seeing massive healing, a massive explosive healing in people when they feel like they've been heard and they have something they're connected to.
All right. Sounds good. And those of you who are regular listeners to the Building Your Life podcast, you know how to get in touch with me at the guardianrockwealth.com website, or you can text the word life, LIFE, to 321-421-5213. You'll get all of my information, and you can either use the free information that's there and do things on your own, or you can contact me and get on my calendar. Be happy to have a conversation directly with you about your situation in terms of wealth management and building your best life using the tool that we call money. Dr. Fred, it's been awesome to have you on the show today. I'm looking forward to kind of going out on your website, exploring a little bit more. And I really like the concept of this undoctor, unmedicate, and get back to who we are based on what has happened to us in our lives and
Exactly. What
enjoying
not
how
only what
God
has
created us.
where it's more based on where we're going than based on what has happened.
That's right. Exactly. Because you got to look forward because looking backward, you can maybe learn from it, but it's not really going to affect what's going to happen in the future then.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you, everyone. We'll see everybody next time on the Building Your Life podcast. Everybody have a great day.